What's up, everybody? I'm Jimmy LaRue.
Hey, I'm Tony Moore.
I'm Dakota Bailey.
Connor Bremmett. Today we're just going to talk about failing forward. Each individual here is going to give an example how they failed forward, and then I'm going to go in depth on my failing forward story.
What's up, everybody? My opportunity to fail forward was a car accident that happened to me on April 10th, 2011. They said that I would never walk or use my hand again, that I would never be mentally there. The list goes on. But the opportunity for me is that I never even heard of occupational therapy, and that was one of the therapies that I went through, and that was something that got my full function back in my hand, even after they said I would never have it. So yeah, just super thankful for that, and then I ended up getting my doctorate in occupational therapy, and I get the opportunity to serve people where they're at whenever some type of unforeseen challenge has been thrust upon them, so they can live life to the fullest.
So when I first got into sales, it was the first 3 months in car sales. I went 2 weeks without selling a vehicle, thought about quitting, was like about this close to quitting actually, and then decided to keep pushing forward. And then after that, I got salesperson of the month after, and then continued on to get salesperson of the year for the next 4 years after that.
So my sophomore year of college, I actually failed my anatomy class. It was the first time I'd ever failed a class in school. That summer I actually thought about quitting school altogether. Then I decided to give it one last shot, came back, and my junior year I actually got an A- in the class.
So my fail forward story is going to start my freshman year of high school. I was varsity at 135 pounds, and going throughout my freshman year I was 9-17, and I had 6 forfeits, and that counts as a win, so I technically only had 3 wins, 17 losses, and I did make it out of sectionals. And then fast forward 7 or 8 years, in my senior year of college, I was a national qualifier for Wabash College at 165 pounds. It all starts out my freshman year. I was varsity at 135 pounds, DeKalb High School. And basically going throughout the year I was pretty terrible, but I maintained that varsity spot. And I was 9-17 at the end of the year. I did make it out of sectionals. I had 6 forfeits, which are counted as wins, so 6 of my 9 wins were actually forfeits, where I didn't have an opponent, so I only got 3 actual wins that entire year out of 20 actual matches. So yeah, I failed pretty epically there, I would say. But really at the end of that year, I had really 2 choices I could make, and that was quit or conquer. At the conclusion of that year, I saw some of my teammates, make it to regional, semi-state, and state. My first experience at state really caused me to have a mindset shift. I knew that a wrestler that's 9-17 wouldn't make it to state. And like I said, my first experience at state was basically a pivotal role in the way I changed my mind about wrestling. Like I said, I had 2 choices to quit or conquer, and after going to state, I chose to conquer. So that summer, I really surrounded myself with the right people. I got in with other people that were champions, that were walking a fine line of being a good wrestler, and I trained with them, I hung around them, and that really changed my mindset about wrestling. And so that led into my sophomore year. I started the season really fresh, a brand new mindset, obviously a lot more athletic than I was my freshman year. But going through my freshman year, I was 30-15 rather than 9-17, so obviously a big improvement there as far as record goes. I ended up being a sectional champion, whereas the year previous I didn't even make it out of sectionals, let alone become a champion. And I made it all the way to the ticket round of semi-state, which is 1 round away from state, and I missed that, winning that match by 1 point. Basically the big changes that I made between my freshman and sophomore year was my circle of influence. I got around the right people that had like-minded goals. I had added focus. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Really wanted to focus on the sport of wrestling. I knew that was something that I can control myself. Made it to the ticket round of semi-state, 1 point away from state. And this allowed me to realize that I actually was at this level. Obviously not the state level, but I was very close to being at the state level. So again, after my sophomore year, I had all this regained focus. So going into my junior year, which I finished 33-9, I was a sectional runner-up, a regional champion. I still lost in the ticket round. I have all this added confidence, all this extra focus, all this extra hard work that I put in didn't get me any closer to my goal, because technically I'm still at the same point in my wrestling career as I was the previous year, with after all the hard work that I put in. So it was devastating. It was a big heartbreak for me, and I looked at it like I had one more chance to do this. So going into my senior year, I had this newfound focus. I ended up being a conference champ, NHC conference champ at 152 pounds, a sectional champ, regional champ, and so regionals is the tournament before semi-state. So going into semi-state, I just had this newfound confidence. I felt unbeatable. I don't want to say unbeatable, like I'm cocky, but I didn't feel like there was anybody that, if I wrestled to my best, could really compete with me. And so I was just calm, collected going into semi-state. I ended up having a technical fall the first round and a pin the second round. I'm going to state. So I basically had this weight lifted off my chest. I'm finally breaking through that barrier that I've been caught by the past 3 years, and finally getting the chance to become a state champion. So now I'm made it 1 week further than I had the past 2 years, and 4 weeks further than I had since my freshman year. So going into state, it was clear to me that my hard work, dedication, perseverance was paying off, but my goal wasn't complete. You know, I set out, ever since my sophomore year, I set out to be a state champion. So going into state, I knew what I had to do. So Friday night, I won. Now I'm placing, at least. And so I made weight for Saturday, won my first match. Now I'm in the semifinals. That's one match away from being in the finals, competing for a state title. And I had the #1 seed. He was a runner-up from the year previous, and Josh Farrell was his name. So I make it to the semifinals. I wrestle him, really tight match, and about a minute left in the third period, he was up by a point. I broke my ankle, and I couldn't compete anymore. I tried as hard as I could. I was that close to tasting victory and being a state champion, but my coach threw in the white, and I injured faulted out of that match. Injured faulted my placement match, defaulted to fourth. Was I proud of myself? Yeah. Seeing that I, in 3 years, changed. I went from 9-17 to 35-5, placed fourth at state, but something didn't settle right with me. I still felt like I failed. So as I said, I felt like I was heartbroken again. I wasn't settled with, or basically confident. I wasn't really super proud of a fourth place finish. So that led into my college decision. In the beginning, I didn't want to wrestle, because that's where my focus had been for the past 4 years or better. Nothing but wrestling. That basically controlled my entire life, because I was set out to be a state champion. But like I said, that loss and the injury default to fourth place really affected my decision to wrestle in college. I wasn't going to, as I said, but I didn't want to end my career on a loss or a failure again. I wanted to move forward, and I wanted to continue to be a student of the sport. So I made my decision to wrestle at Wabash College. They were an up-and-coming team, had a lot of studs there. I really liked the brotherhood that I felt like I had there. All kinds of friends, the atmosphere was awesome. So like I said, continued my career at Wabash College. So my freshman year, I ended up going 10-3. Battled some injuries. It was just a different environment. I was actually third string, which kind of blew my mind, really kind of didn't set well with me. I was really down on myself. I go from being on top of the world, or I felt like on top of the world, to being third string. That didn't really set well with me. So I was really kind of beating myself up in the practice room, just about this, about that, about this. And that's when actually Jimmy, who was on here earlier, his story comes into play. So if any of you know Jimmy LaRue, he's one of the most happy people you'll ever meet. He's always got a smile on his face. He's always looking at things as a positive. And as I described him earlier today, actually, I described him as a tall cup of coffee because he's full of energy all the time. And so I looked at him one day and I go, how do you have all that energy? And basically he just cheered me up because at that point in time I was thinking about this being my last wrestling season, my freshman year. And he basically taught me into continuing to do it. So one of the things that Jimmy said in the conversation we had that really resonated with me and kind of got my headspace right and changed my mindset was what Paul said in the Bible, and that is how we view our circumstances is more important than the circumstances themselves. I let that sink in, and it just changed my mindset on everything. You know, I didn't look at being third string as a bad thing anymore. I just looked at that as, you know, I have all this room to improve. So it kind of fueled the fire. So my sophomore year started at Wabash, and I was still second string. I wasn't varsity yet, but I was behind Ethan Farmer, who ended up achieving All-American status that year at 165 pounds. But the biggest change that came my sophomore year was the fact that my workload was much more difficult than it was my freshman year. You know, the math and the physics classes really started to get challenging, and I was struggling in that aspect. And it still didn't set well with me that I was second. Even though I competed well with Ethan, he still beat me, and I felt like the coaches were out to get me. Looking bad on my grades, like I was going to fail. So I basically made the decision to quit, and I wanted to talk to the coaches. I talked to Coach Irwin. I had a much better relationship with Coach Irwin at this point in my career. He was the coach that did my recruiting. He was the coach that I got along the best with. He was the coach I did the individuals with. Tell him the situation, you know, I'm pretty confident I'm quitting. Whatever, bro. No, this whatever. That's how negative my attitude was at the time. And he looks at me dead in the face, kind of chuckles. He said, let's go talk to Coach Anderson. So I go into Coach Anderson's office, and I immediately try to tell him the story so I can get out of there because I know he's going to be upset. I'm terrified. And now the entire coaching staff is in there, not just the head coach and the assistant coach. Coach Epper was in there, and then Reese was in there, I think. And I tell him the circumstances. You know, I'm struggling with my grades. I hate cutting weight. I'm transferring to Purdue. I already had the transfer papers filled out. Yeah. Basically, screw this. I'm not wrestling anymore. And still trying to be tough, but my voice started quivering. And Coach Anderson looks at me and said, nope, that's not happening. So long story short, he gave me the weekend off, and I came back Monday, and I continued wrestling, but my head still wasn't there. It wasn't here. I didn't want to be there. I was just going to finish out the season. I wasn't going to come back. So once again, my circle of influence really helped me out in this situation. You know, I was basically at an all-time low. I wanted to quit wrestling. I wanted to quit Wabash College and transfer. And that wasn't in my best interest, but at the time, just because of where my mind was, I thought it was. It was going to be my best decision. You know, I'd get away, do my own thing. But my coaches, they pulled me in, they lifted me up, and they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. They had faith in me, and that helped change my mind, you know, about the sport of wrestling. I'm all in right now. So fast forward to, let's go to our regional tournament, my sophomore year. So like I said earlier on, I was a runner, or second string, I was second string to Ethan Farmer, who that year ended up qualifying for nationals. He won his qualifying match, pretty close match to a guy that I lost to earlier in the year, pretty close match as well. And that really fueled my fire. I was happy for Ethan, but I was like, I know I can do this. I'm right there with him. And so going on to nationals, I see my teammates place in the national tournament. Ethan placed at the national tournament, and that was just more reassurance to me that that's where I belong. You know, I'm gonna have to go in 100%. I can't have any second guessing myself. I can't have any weak points. You know, I have to really be on top of my grades. I have to be on top of my nutrition, on top of my training, and really get my head right entering the next season. So at Nationals, seeing my teammates compete at the highest level in our sport, really, it really ignited the fire underneath me. I really found my why. And so I made the decision after the season to stay at Wabash and train throughout the summer. And again, going back to the circle of influence, that really helped me out. I was surrounding myself with the right people. The biggest one was obviously the coaches were there, but they can't train with us like they can during season. But the biggest influence that I had there was Riley Lefevre. He was a 4-time national champion, basically the GOAT. So I trained with him every day. I picked his brain. That really influenced me, and it helped me get my mind right and know what I was accomplishing or what I wanted to accomplish was right there within my grasp. So going into my junior year, I had this newfound confidence, again, similar to like I had my senior year of high school. I had this newfound confidence. You know, I was on top of my weight, I was on top of my grades, I was on top of everything. I was, you know, walking that fine line like Riley did. And so that was a pivotal moment, just training with the right people, again, going back to the circle of influence. So again, my junior year, I wrestled 165 pounds. I had the varsity spot, and I had a lot of ups and downs throughout the season. You know, still had little tweaks there that I needed to make in my mindset, my training, and everything. But the biggest thing is I remained focused on the goal. I came to the practice room every day ready to work. I came to the weight room every day ready to work. And I just became obsessed with the sport, so I was always getting better every day. And that's the biggest thing. So at the end of my junior year, I ended up going 33-9 that year, and I was a national qualifier, something that nobody thought I was going to do. At the regional tournament, I lost my second round match to the eventual national champion, and I wrestled all the way back for third, which qualified me for nationals. I basically got a blind draw and I get seeded. So I drew into the returning national champion. And again, I just kind of felt defeated, you know, walking like this, whatever, man, at least I was a qualifier, right? But again, going back to circle of influence, I had a great coaching staff, and they picked me up. They're like, that guy's beatable. He's nothing. So they got my head right again and again and again. And going in, and I actually beat him. You know, I wrestled a perfect match. So again, that added fuel to my fire. Just lit the match, and I was ready to rock and roll. Unfortunately, I lost 2 in a row after that, so I didn't All-American, my ultimate goal. Obviously, fell short of being a national champion. And so yeah, that leads into the summer between my junior and senior year, which is a lot like the summer before my junior year, in that I stayed at Wabash and trained. But again, I had refined my focus, you know, what worked for me the past year, what didn't work for me, and I just kept refining, making fine-tuned adjustments throughout the summer. And I'd say one of the biggest things, one of the most pivotal moments in that summer was when Riley, Reese, and I traveled to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and we got the pleasure to train with some of the best in the world at that facility. And just, again, circle of influence, being around those guys, really honed in on how they train, how they approach everyday life, and that's how you become a champion. So entering my senior year, I was confident in the training that I did. I was confident in my eating habits. I was confident that I was walking that fine line that I discussed earlier, and it was paying off. You know, I had that newfound confidence, similar to, like I said, my senior year of high school. I had that newfound confidence. Nothing was going to stop me. I was so ultra focused on that goal, nothing was going to get in my way. So then, fast forward throughout the year, I went undefeated in the regular season, all the way until the regional finals, which is our national qualifier. And I lost to the same guy that I lost to the previous year, the defending national champion at this point. So that was frustrating. I still punched my ticket to nationals, and my ultimate goal was being a national champion. So I still had that to accomplish. 2 weeks later. So nationals that year were at La Crosse, Wisconsin. So I was we get to lacrosse, I'm eager. I'm chomping at the bit to get on the mat. I'm ready to rock and roll. And ultimately, you know, we could talk about the why did it happen, this, that, and the other. We could say I choked, but I don't know why it happened. That's the biggest thing. All I know is that I failed to accomplish my goal, and thus far, out of all the failures I talked about in my wrestling story, this is the biggest, and it hit me the hardest. I was devastated. I mean, I felt like I walked a perfectly fine line. My diet was right, my mind was right. I had the best coaches, I believe, in the nation, and I didn't accomplish it for whatever reason, and that's a pretty tough pill to swallow. For any of you that know me, I really beat myself up about stuff like that, knowing that I was in control, solely in control of the situation. But I guess the only way that I moved past that is knowing that, one, it wasn't in the deck of cards for me at that time, which is, again, still really tough to swallow. But two, that I could share the story with somebody. And that's kind of what we're doing with Empowered by 3. Jimmy and I are doing Empowered by 3. We're trying to share both of our very unique stories in a way that can help others not only fail forward, but fail often. We don't lose, we learn, or we win. So that's how I failed forward. Did I accomplish all the goals that I wanted to? No. But I really think that I can use my story and pass it on to somebody else, help somebody else learn from my story, and help them be champions. And I think, like I said, Jimmy's got a very unique story, so that's where Empowered by 3 comes from. And for more information about that, you can come contact Jimmy or myself. As far as failing forward, that's all you can do, right? Yeah. You fail early, you fail often, and you fail forward, in the wise words of Will Smith. In the wise words of Simon Sinek, what good is an idea if it remains an idea? Try, experiment, fail, try again, change the world. So again, failing forward is huge, but in order to do that, there's a lot of things ingrained in my story that I couldn't have done it without the people around me. So your circle of influence is huge with failing forward. You want to have people that support you in anything that you do. They don't point their finger and laugh when you fall. They help pick you up and push you forward, keep you going. Just like Dakota Bailey's analogy to the parked car, you know, it can't help you steer a parked car. And your circle of influence can't help you steer unless you try, experiment, and fail. And even if you fail, you can keep moving forward. That's the important part. You don't go back. So in closing, let us know how we might have changed your world. So you can comment, like, subscribe, share it, let us know. Appreciate it. See you, bro. I'm out.